Hello guys, today we'll learn the neurovascular structures of the anterior abdominal wall, right? Neurovasculature of the anterior abdominal wall means arteries, veins, and nerves and lymphatic drainage of the anterior abdominal wall. Understanding the blood supply of the abdominal wall, right, is critical when planning incisions, raising myocutaneous flaps, and reconstructing the abdominal wall during the ventral hernial repair. That means for surgeries, right, incisions, reconstructions. For all of these, right, the neurovasculature, knowledge of the neurovasculature of the anterior abdominal wall is very critical, especially for surgeons and for anatomy students, right? In the artery, coming to the arteries and veins, right? The superior epigastric artery and veins. The superior epigastric artery is a terminal branch of internal thoracic artery, right? We'll see that here in the, see, this is the internal, right? This is internal thoracic artery. Right? If we right, this one is the internal thoracic artery, right? This is the right one and this is the left one, right? So this is the superior epigastric artery, the branch of internal thoracic artery. Upper one is internal thoracic artery, whereas the lower one is its branch, right? Continuation, superior epigastric artery. This is the main supply of the anterior abdominal wall, along with inferior epigastric artery, right? So this is the superior epigastric artery. This is the fifth, and this is the sixth rib, right? Remember that. So, right. It arises at the level of the sixth costal cartilage and descends between the costal and xiphoid slips of the diaphragm, accompanied by two or more veins, right, that drain to the internal thoracic vein. So this artery accompanies the vein, right, superior epigastric vein. The vessels pass anterior to the lower fibers of the transversus thoracis and upper fibers of the transversus abdominis before entering the rectus sheath. So these vessels enters the rectus sheath where they run inferiorly behind rectus abdominis, right? So where this lies, the superior epigastric and artery and vein lies are in the rectus sheath, right? Behind rectus abdominis, right? They anastomose with the inferior epigastric arteries, right? Usually above the level of the umbilicus in one of the several potential branching patterns. We'll see that, right? This is the superior epigastric artery and this is the sixth, right? Sixth intercostal cartilage, this is the xiphoid, right? And if we want to, that is the vein, right? These are the veins, artery and veins, right? This is the vein, superior epigastric vein, right and left. And these are the inferior epigastric artery and veins. See, this is the inferior epigastric artery and this is the inferior epigastric vein, arises from the external iliac artery and vein, right? So these anastomose above the umbilicus, right? So these are the main vasculature of the anterior abdominal wall. Let us do this thing, okay? So these are not superficial, they are somewhat deep, to the anterior abdominal wall. Okay, so let us select and hide the external oblique muscle, and let us also hide the rectus abdominis, right? So they lies in within the rectus sheath, right, on the transversus abdominis. This is the transversus abdominis, right? This is the transversus abdominis, right? On the transversus abdominis they lie, right? So if we hide the abdominis also, we will see the inferior epigastric artery and vein, right? Right. Branches supply the rectus abdominis and perforate the anterior lamina of rectus sheath to supply the abdominal skin. Right. A branch given off in the upper rectus sheath passes anterior to the xiphoid pus of the sternum and anastomose with a corresponding contralateral branch. This vessel may give rise to bleeding during surgical incisions that extend up to alongside the xiphoid process. So, a branch of the superior epigastric artery, right, which anastomose with the same branch of the contralateral side, right, sometimes may injure during incisions, right? This gives the bleeding. The superior epigastric artery also gives us small branches to the anterior part of the diaphragm. On the right, small branches reach the falciform ligament where the anastomose with branches of the hepatic artery, right? That is regarding superior epigastric artery. You see, this is the superior epigastric artery and vein, right? And these are the inferior epigastric artery and vein, right? So the anastomose over the umbilicus level, right? This is the umbilical level, right? You see, these are the deep vessels. Superficial vessels are different. They are thoracoepigastric vein, superficial epigastric, superficial circumflex, superficial axonal pudendal, and deep circumflex iliac. We'll see that in a minute. Right, you see, this is the rectus abdominis. We are already seeing that. Right, this superior epigastric artery and vein lies deep to the rectus abdominis, within the rectus sheath, right, within the rectus sheath, but deep to the rectus abdominis, right? We'll see that again, right? You see, you can't see that if we see. See, so this is very deep, right? Deep to the rectus abdominis, right? So this inferior epigastric artery and vein, right, arising from the external iliac artery and vein, right? So inferior epigastric artery and veins, the inferior epigastric artery, often referred to as the deep inferior epigastric artery in clinical practice, in order to distinguish from the superficial epigastric artery. So superficial epigastric artery, to distinguish between the superficial epigastric artery and this inferior epigastric artery. This is deep inferior epigastric artery, or simply inferior epigastric artery. Originates from the axonal iliac artery just proximal to the inguinal ligament, right? We'll see that. You see, this is the external iliac artery, right? And this is the external iliac vein, right? You see, so this is arising from the external iliac artery, right? This is the inferior epigastric artery, right? And this is the inferior epigastric vein, right and left, right? Sometimes it may arise from this side of the inguinal ligament, that is femoral artery, but that is a rare condition, right? So it is arising from the external iliac artery and vein, right? See, it's very clear. Its accompanying veins usually to unite to form a single vein drains into external iliac. It curves forward in the anterior extraperitoneal tissue and ascends obliquely along the medial margin of the deep inguinal ring. It lies posterior to the spermatic cord, separated from it by transversalis fascia. Right? You see, this is the spermatic cord. Right? This lies, you see, this lies posterior to the spermatic cord. Right? Posterior to the spermatic cord and is separated from the transversalis fascia. Right? This is the spermatic fascia which envelops the cord within the cord. Right? You understand it? It pierces the transversalis fascia and enters the rectus sheath by passing anterior to the arcuate line. In this part of its course, it is visible through the parietal peritoneum and anterior abdominal wall and forms lateral umbilical fold. Disruption of the artery at this site by surgical incisions, example, insertion of laparoscopic ports of abdominal drains, may result in a hematoma that can expand to considerable size because of absence of adjacent tissue against which the bleeding can be tamponaded. So there is no tissue to contain the bleeding. So the hematoma will be very large, right? The vascular supply to the anterior abdominal wall can be divided into 3 zones, right? The zone 1 represents the epigastrium and central anterior abdominal wall within the region of rectus abdominis and is supplied by the superior and inferior epigastric vessels, right? This is strictly anterior abdominal wall and epigastrium. Zone 2 consists of the lower anterior abdominal wall below zone 1, right? This is epigastrium and rectus abdominis. Zone 2 is below the rectus abdominis, right? Predominantly supplied by the superficial epigastric, superficial external pudendal and superficial external iliac, circumflex iliac. Right, zone 3, which is a lateral zone. Okay, so these two are, zone 1 is anterior abdominal wall upper part, anterior abdominal wall lower part. This is lateral wall, right? Lateral abdominal wall by the musculophrenic lower intercostal and subcostal and lumbar arteries, right? You see, this is the zone 1 and this is the zone 2, right? And this is the zone 3, right? Right? So you see inferior epigastric, superior epigastric, right? Anastomosing within the rectus sheath. See, this is the arcuate line, right? So all the vessels, both veins and arteries, anastomosing around this lane. Again, these are the superficial. Superficially we have superficial epigastric, superficial circumflex iliac and external pudendal, which come from, you see, this is the sagittal section. You see, this is the rectus sheath, anterior wall of rectus sheath and posterior wall of rectus sheath. So within the rectus sheath lies the vasculature, right? Inferior epigastric artery and superior epigastric artery. See, so this lies within the rectus sheath behind rectus abdominis, right? The inferior epigastric arteries ascend and anastomose with their superior counterpart with branching in about 30%. So in 30% of cases, before they anastomosing, they give some branches, right? Whereas in 60% of cases, branching into 2 vessels before anastomosis is the most common pattern, accounting for almost 60% of cases, with a trifurcation being present in the remainder, right? So sometimes three branches comes up before anastomosing with the superior epigastric artery. The inferior epigastric arteries have an average diameter of approximately 3 mm at their origin, compared to an average diameter of 1.6 mm at the origin of the superior epigastric artery. So, superior epigastric are somewhat narrower at their origin, presumably explaining why the inferior epigastric arteries provide the dominant supply of the rectus abdominis. That means the dominant supply to the rectus abdominis muscle is provided by the inferior epigastric artery because of its large bore, right? Large diameter. The preliminary ligation of the inferior epigastric artery is often performed when preparing a myocutaneous flap using the mid or lower rectus abdominis based on the superior epigastric artery, right? Because of its large bore. This encourages the augmentation of the superior epigastric arterial supply. Branches of the inferior epigastric artery anastomose with branches of the superior epigastric artery within the rectus sheath posterior to the rectus abdominis at a variable level above the umbilicus. Right, we have already seen this. And other branches anastomose with the terminal branches of the lower 5 posterior intercostal. Right, lower 5 posterior intercostal, subcostal, and lumbar arteries. Right, so these inferior other branches of the inferior epigastric artery anastomose with the lower 5 intercostal arteries, subcostal arteries, and lumbar arteries. Infralaterally, branches anastomose with the deep circumflex iliac artery. The inferior epigastric artery ascends along the medial margin of the deep inguinal ring. The vast difference in the male or the round ligament in the female passes medially after hooking around the artery at the deep inguinal ring. Right? We'll see that. So this is superficial epigastric artery, right? Which this is the cutaneous supply of the abdomen, whereas the deep supply is by superior and inferior epigastric arteries. The cutaneous supply is by superficial epigastric, right? And here is the superficial circumflex iliac, right? These are the selected structures, okay? Right and left, superficial circumflex iliac. This is superficial epigastric artery. This one, right? And these are the superficial external pudendal arteries, right? You have already undergone these arteries, right, in the dissection, right? So superficial epigastric, superficial external pudendal, superficial circumflex iliac arteries, right? And these are the lumbar arteries, right? These are the lumbar arteries, and these are the costal arteries. This is subcostal artery. T12 artery is the subcostal artery, right? Subcostal artery, and this is T11 posterior intercostal artery, right? So this inferior epigastric artery anastomose with all of these things, right? The artery forms the lateral border of the Hasselbalch's inguinal triangle, an important landmark in the laparoscopic inguinal hernia. Right, the inferior border of the triangle is formed by the inguinal ligament, and the medial border is formed by the lateral margin of rectus abdominis. You see, external iliac veins. This is the inferior epigastric artery. This is the inferior epigastric vein, right? Vessels. So this is vast difference. So you see, this is right, and you see this one is called as Hasselbalch's triangle, right? inferior part of rectus abdominis and inguinal ligament forming their borders. This is Hasselbalch's triangle. So this is forming, this is inferior epigastric vessels. So this is forming a border of a margin of Hasselbalch's triangle, right? You see here, right? And if you clearly see, this is the vas deferens, right? Entering the spermatic cord, right? You see, this is the inferior epigastric artery. So the vas deferens is hooking around the inferior epigastric artery, right? You can clearly see that. You see, this is the inferior epigastric artery and this is the vas deferens. You see, so that is the structure. So external pudendal, right? Superficial circumflex celiac and superficial epigastric arteries, and also deep circumflex celiac also. This is the deep circumflex celiac. You see deep circumflex celiac, right? All these supplies the cutaneous supply of the anterior abdominal wall, right? In the inferior epigastric artery also gives off cremasteric artery, right? A pubic branch and muscular and cutaneous branches. The cremasteric artery accompanies the spermatic cord in males, supplies cremaster and other coverings of the cord, and anastomose with the testicular artery. In females, the artery is small and accompanies the round ligament. A pubic branch near the femoral ring, right, descends posterior to the pubis and anastomose with the pubic branch of the obturator artery. Right, you have already seen that. You see, this is the inferior epigastric artery, right? See, this one is coming, and this one is the obturator artery, right? This one be pubic branch of inferior epigastric artery, right? Pubic branch. The pubic branch of the inferior epigastric artery may be larger than the obturator artery. We have already seen that, and supply the most of the obturator artery territory in the thigh, in which case it is referred to as the aberrant obturator artery. So the aberrant obturator artery is nothing but the pubic branch of epigastric artery which anastomoses with the obturator artery. It lies close to the medial border of the femoral ring and may be damaged in the medial dissection of the ring during femoral or laparoscopic inguinal hernial repair or with pelvic fractures. Muscular branches supply the abdominal muscles and peritoneum and anastomose with the circumflex iliac and lumbar arteries. Cutaneous branches perforate the aponeuris of the external oblique, supply the skin and anastomose with the branch of the superficial epigastric artery. So the inferior epigastric artery has branches, a pubic branch, a muscular branch, and cutaneous branches, right? So pubic branch anastomoses with the obturator artery and supplies the obturator artery territory because of its large bore, right? Sometimes it can be injured during hernia repair or in the pelvic fractures. And the muscular branches supply abdominal muscles and peritoneum and anastomose with the circumflex iliac and lumbar arteries. Whereas the cutaneous branches supply the pierces the aponeuris of external oblique and supply the skin. These muscular cutaneous perforators have been mapped in detail because they are particularly important to the plastic surgeons undertaking reconstructive surgery with myocutaneous flaps. Occasionally, the inferior epigastric may arise from the femoral artery. This is occasion, right? It then ascends anterior to the femoral vein and follow its usual abdominal course. Rarely, it arises from the external iliac artery in common with an aberrant obturator artery or from the obturator artery, right? These are variations, but usually and in almost all cases, inferior epigastric artery arises from the external iliac artery, right? And it has double the diameter of the superior epigastric. Superior epigastric artery has only 1.6 mm, right, at the origin, whereas inferior epigastric artery has 3 mm at its origin. The superior and inferior epigastric arteries are important source of collateral blood flow between internal thoracic artery and the external iliac artery when aortic blood flow is compromised. Right? Superior and inferior artery are the main sources between the internal thoracic artery and the external iliac artery. Small tributaries of the inferior epigastric vein draining the skin around the umbilicus, anastomose with the terminal branches of the umbilical vein, draining the umbilical region via falciform ligament. These portosystemic anastomosis may open widely in cases of portal hypertension, when portal venous blood may drain into the systemic circulation via the inferior epigastric veins. The pattern of dilated superficial veins radiating from the umbilicus is referred to as caput medicae, right? Caput medicae. Okay, because of the portal vein obstruction. When the portal vein is obstructed, right, the backflow is formed around the umbilicus, right? This is lateral thoracic vein, superficial epigastric vein, right? See, this is the caput medicae, like radiating from the umbilicus, okay? Only happen during portal hypertension, right? When the portal vein is obstructed. Caval obstruction, that is obstruction of the superior and inferior vena cava, the thoracoepigastric vein, right? Thoracoepigastric vein connecting the saphenous and axillary veins open up, right? Saphenous and axillary veins are connected through thoracoepigastric veins. These open in the caval obstruction, right? So coming to the another set of arteries, posterior intercostal, subcostal and lumbar arteries. That 10th, 11th, posterior intercostal arteries, the subcostal artery, that is T12 artery, and the lumbar artery speeds the posterior aponeurosis of the transversus abdominis to enter the neurovascular plane of the abdominal wall deep to the internal oblique. Right? So we'll see. See, I already said that. That is subcostal artery, right? Right, and this is the left subcostal artery. This is the T10 intercostal artery, right? And these are the lumbar arteries, right? These are the lumbar arteries. See? So the lumbar arteries, subcostal artery, T10, right? The arteries on either side run forwards, giving off muscular branches to the overlying internal and external oblique before anastomosing with the lateral branch of the superior and inferior epigastric arteries at the lateral border of the rectus sheath. So they gives up branches to the external oblique and internal oblique and anastomose with the superior epigastric and inferior epigastric arteries. Perforating cutaneous vessels run vertically through the muscles to supply the overlying skin and subcutaneous tissue. So they pierce the muscle vertically, right, through the muscle. A small contribution to the supply of the lower abdominal muscles comes from the branches of the deep circumflex iliac arteries. Anterior abdominal wall is also supplied by branches of the superficial epigastric, superficial circumflex iliac, superficial external pudendal, and deep circumflex iliac arteries. We have already seen that. You see, this is the posterior intercostal arteries, superficial circumflex, deep circumflex iliac, superficial external pudendal, and all these things, right? See, this is the, you see here, the lumbar artery, right? This is the subcostal artery, and this is the intercostal artery, right? You can see that. See, we see that these are the lumbar arteries, right? Selected structures are lumbar arteries, and this is the subcostal artery, and this is the intercostal artery, T11 and T10 intercostal arteries. You see how they are forming, right? So in a nutshell, superficially, the abdominal wall is supplied by the branches of the musculophrenic artery, terminal branch of the internal thoracic artery, right? So musculophrenic artery, you'll see that. This is the musculophrenic artery, right? Musculophrenic artery is, right? This is the superior epigastric artery, and this is the musculophrenic artery. Musculophrenic artery is the terminal branch of the internal thoracic artery, right? Part of the abdomen is supplied by the musculophrenic artery superficially, right? Superficially, superior part of wall is musculophrenic artery. Inferior part of the wall supplied by medially placed superficial epigastric, laterally placed superficial circumflex iliac, and both branches of the femoral artery. So supplied by the branches of the internal thoracic and branch of the femoral arteries, right? Superficially. Above by the musculophrenic artery, below by the superficial epigastric and circumflex iliac. At a deeper level, right? Superior part of the wall is supplied by the superior epigastric. Lateral part of the wall is supplied by branches of the 10th, 11th intercostal arteries and the subcostal artery. Inferior part of the wall is supplied by medially placed inferior epigastric artery, laterally placed deep circumflex iliac, right? So at a deeper level, upper part is supplied by superior epigastric artery, lateral part is lower part is supplied by inferior epigastric and deep circumflex iliac arteries, whereas the lateral part within the deep level is supplied by the intercostal and subcostal arteries, right? That is arterial supply and venous drainage of the anterior abdominal wall. Coming to the lymphatic drainage, superficial lymphatic vessels accompany the subcutaneous blood vessels, right? Superficial lymphatic vessels accompanies subcutaneous blood vessels. Vessels from the lumbar and gluteal regions run with the superficial circumflex iliac vessels, and those from the infraumbilical skin run with the superficial epigastric vessels. Both drain into superficial inguinal lymph nodes. Right? Supraumbilical region is drained by vessels draining to the axillary lymph nodes and parasternal lymph nodes. The deep lymphatic vessels accompany the deeper arteries. Laterally, they run either with the lumbar arteries to drain into the lumbar aortic nodes, right? Or with the intercostal and subcostal arteries to posterior mediastinal nodes. Posterior mediastinal nodes and aortic nodes. Lymphatics in the upper anterior abdominal wall run with the superior epigastric vessels to parasternal nodes, while those in the lower abdominal wall run with the deep circumflex iliac and inferior epigastric arteries to external iliac nodes. Right? You see, this is the axillary lymph nodes, inguinal, superficial inguinal lymph nodes, right? Cutaneous. So they drain into axilla or the inguinal. Cutaneous lymph vessels runs along the cutaneous vessels, whereas the deep lymphatics runs along with the deep vessels, right? You see, mm, this is external iliac lymph nodes, right? External iliac lymph nodes, and these are the inguinal lymph nodes, right? Vertical section. These are the inguinal lymph nodes, superficial section, right? And these are the aortic lymph nodes, right? Para-aortic lymph nodes. These are the axillary lymph nodes, right? And you see, these are the parasternal lymph nodes, right? And lymph vessels. You'll see that by hiding these things, right? Parasternum, because these are behind the sternum, right? Parasternal lymph nodes. I will show you, right? So aortic lymph nodes, inguinal lymph nodes, right? You'll see this like this. Aortic lymph nodes, inguinal lymph nodes, right? Axial iliac lymph nodes, parasternal lymph nodes, and axillary lymph nodes, right? So you see, this is the lymph node structure, right? So this is the parasternum, right? Parasternum. This is para-aortic. This is external iliac. This is inguinal. You see, right? Coming to the innervation nose. The skin, muscles, and parietal peritoneum of the anterolateral abdominal wall is supplied by T7 to T12 and L1 spinal nerves, right? Anterior rami of these spinal nerves pass around the body from posterior to the anterior in an inferomedial direction, right? We'll see that. You see, this is the whole blood vessels, lymph vessels, and nerves of the anterior abdominal wall. We'll see only nose here, right? So these are the intercostal nerves, right? T7, T8, T9, T10, 11, and 12. This is the L1, right? L1 spinal nerve. So these spinal nerves, anterior rami coming inferior medial direction, right? They are running inferiorly and medially, right? Coming to the anterior anterior side, right? You understand the point? Inferior medial direction, winding around the body, right? Right. As they proceed, they give off lateral cutaneous branch and end as an anterior cutaneous branch. So they gives off two branches, lateral cutaneous and anterior cutaneous branch. The intercostal nerves of T7 to T11 leave their intercostal spaces, passing deep to the costal cartilage and continue onto the anterolateral abdominal wall between the internal oblique and transverse abdominis muscle. So nose lies between internal oblique and transverse abdominis muscle. Reaching the lateral edge of the rectus sheath, they enter the rectus sheath and pass posterior to the lateral aspect of the rectus abdominis muscle. Approaching the midline, an anterior cutaneous branch passes through the rectus abdominis muscle and anterior wall of the rectus sheath to supply the skin. Spinal nerves T12, subcostal nerve follows a similar course as the intercostals. Branches of the L1, iliohypogastric nerve, ilioinguinal nerve, which originate from the lumbar plexus, follow similar course initially, but deviate from this pattern near the final destination. You see, see from the L1, we have already seen this is the L1, right? This is the L1. From L1 coming the iliohypogastric nerve, right? That is iliohypogastric nerve, and Another nerve is ilioinguinal nerve, that is iliohypogastric, and this is ilioinguinal nerve, coming from the same lumbar plexus. This is iliohypogastric, this is ilioinguinal nerve, that is ilioinguinal nerve, right? Along their course, now T7 to T12 and L1 supply branches of the anterior abdominal wall muscles and underlying parietal peritoneum. All terminate by supplying skin. T7 to T9 supply the skin from the gyphoid process to above the umbilicus. T7 to T9 up to umbilicus. T10 supplies the skin around umbilicus. You have to remember this. T11 and T12 and L1 supply skin from just below umbilicus to the pubic region. Additionally, ilioinguinal nerve supplies anterior surface of the scrotum and labia majora and sends small cutaneous branches to the thigh. You see, this is the anterior rami, intercostal nerve anterior rami. This is anterior rami. This one is posterior rami. Anterior rami giving lateral cutaneous branch with anterior branch and posterior branch. These are the anterior branch of lateral cutaneous nerves, posterior branch of lateral cutaneous nerves, right? And also giving anterior cutaneous branch, right? Anterior cutaneous branch, which has medial branch and lateral branch, right? So I have the intercostal, subcostal, and run this course, right? You see, lateral cutaneous, anterior cutaneous branch of T7 to T12, right? These are the anterior cutaneous branches, and these are the lateral cutaneous branches. Right? Iliohypogastric, ilioinguinal. And you see, these are between rectus abdominis and transversus abdominis. This is the dermatomal pattern, right? Dermatomal pattern of anterior abdominal wall. All these segmental nerves run anteriorly within thin layer of fascia in the neurovascular plane between transversus abdominis and internal oblique muscle, where they branch and interconnect with adjacent nerves. The transversus abdominis plane block is a regional anesthetic technique for abdominal surgery. Using ultrasound imaging guidance, local anesthetic is injected into the neurovascular plane between internal oblique and transversus abdominis, targeting the segmental nerves of the anterolateral abdominal wall. So this is called as TAB block, transversus abdominis plane block, right? In that plane, lies the segmental nerves. Coming to the another important topic, incisions. You have to know these incisions, right? Abdominal incisions are commonly given by surgeons. Midline incision. Incision is given in the midline along the linea. It is easier to perform incision above the umbilicus because linea alba is wider in this region. It is almost bloodless, no muscle fibers are cut, no nerves are injured, and it gives access to both sides of the abdomen. The disadvantage is its healing is very poor. The infraumbilical incision is safer than the supraumbilical region in the midline incision, right? Because of the close approximation of the recti prevents the ventral incisional hernia. So if they are not approximated, it will give rise to the incisional hernia. Coming to the paramedian incision, that means at the side of the middle. The incision is sounder than the median incision. The anterior wall of the rectus sheath is exposed and incised about 1 inch lateral and parallel to the midline. That is 1 inch 2.5 centimeters lateral and parallel to the midline. The anterior wall of the rectus sheath is exposed and incised. The anterior wall of the sheath is freed from the tendinous intersections. The rectus muscle is retracted laterally with its nerve supply intact, and posterior wall of the sheath is exposed. The posterior wall of the sheath along with fascia transversalis and peritoneum is then incised. The wound is closed in layers. This is important. In paramedian incision, post-operative weakness and occurrence of incisional hernia is minimal, right? That is why it is given most frequently, right? Remember that paramedian incision is the most frequent incision. Coming to the McBurney's incision or gridiron incision. McBurney's incision means at the McBurney's point, usually done for the appendectomy. It is commonly given for appendectomy. An oblique incision made in region of the right iliac fossa 5 centimeters above the medial to the anterior superior iliac spine at the right angle to the spino-umbilical line. That means like this. This is umbilicus, right? McBurney's point. Hence, it is termed as muscle splitting. The external oblique, internal oblique, and transabdominis muscles are incised or split in the line of their fibers and retracted to expose the fascia transversalis. That is why it is called as muscle splitting incision. The transversalis fascia and parietal peritoneum are incised to open the abdominal cavity. The incision is closed in layers. The incision has no postoperative weakness. Kocher's incision, right subcostal incision. It is given 2 to 5 centimeters below and parallel to the right subcostal margin, right costal margin. This incision is used to explore the gallbladder and associated ducts. Transverse incision, the transverse incision in the lower part of the abdomen. Slight concavity upward as the line of venous is given about 2 centimeters above the umbilicus along the skin crease, that is line of venous. It is used to explore the pelvic organs, especially in surgeries related to uterus and ovaries. Transverse incision. So you see midline incision, this is midline incision, this is upper midline incision, lower midline incision. This is the safer one, right? This is paramedian incision. This is the most frequent one. And this one is McBurney's incision or gridiron incision for appendectomy. And this one is subcostal incision or Kocher's incision, right, for gallbladder and gall ducts. This at the line of venous is transverse incision for uterus, right, transverse incision. So, have any doubts? Let me know. Let me know if you have any doubts, right?